Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Talk Data to Me. I'm David Kish. I'll be today's host as we look at navigating a federal threat landscape. So with me today, I want to welcome Jim Coyle, federal security strategist, who will be sharing a glimpse into the evolving threat landscape from a federal point of view, and what are some of the ways that public and private organizations are taking proactive, collaborative steps to enhance our national cyber defense. So to start off, over the last few weeks, we've seen a White House executive order on AI, calling out the need to manage cyber risk, developing a roadmap for the future. CISA also recently launched an awareness campaign this month for critical infrastructure security, resilience. From this came a wealth of resources, including a pilot program of cyber shared services for each of these non-government sectors, from healthcare, education, water, how they can leverage best practices, across both public and private sector. So I want to explore why federal agencies are at the core of this urgent drive towards cyber readiness. And to start off, Jim, I just want to welcome you to the show. And to start off, just saying, recently what we've seen is that CISA released official guidance on a very prominent threat actor who Lookout has been following for some time. So I want to ask your perspective. What are some of these recent threats that you've been seeing, and what's causing a unified call to action?
Yeah. So, David, thank you. Let's take a look at some of the bigger things that are happening today. So if we take a look at 3661, 4118, 4709, 3944, a lot of names that most folks will know as Octopus, Scattered Spider, and a few other groups. And this is a highly successful campaign that is utilizing mobile as its initial vector to get into customer environments. And ultimately what's happening is, they're utilizing mobile phishing, and this can come from in the form of an SMS phishing link. It could be through an app like Telegram. It could be, social media. But ultimately, what they're trying to do is to get valid credentials into a phishing page that looks a lot like, take Octopus's, campaign. It's something that looks like a customer's Octopage, right? They may enter in their credentials, which then basically gives attackers those valid credentials, and then they utilize things such as MFA fatigue or even SIM swapping, ultimately to bypass the MFA tokens. So something else to kind of just think about is the mass amount of Predator and Pegasus spyware that we're starting to see, and that really typically targets individuals, right? Reporters. There's dissidents that it typically targets, political opponents of certain regimes. However, we're also seeing several government agencies that are getting, attacked as well as part of larger campaigns. And this really starts to pose a risk to national security beyond just, the individual security. And then, of course, something that just happened in the news this week, where we had, ALPHV, or Black Cat, right, the ransomware group, who ultimately, did not receive a payout from one of their victims, and they actually filed an SEC, report where that victim was supposed to notify the SEC of a breach, and since they didn't get paid, they went ahead for them. But ultimately, there's a lot of varying different groups that are starting to utilize mobile as that initial threat vector. And that does pose a significant risk to not just our national interests, but when we look at a greater scale, you're looking at critical infrastructure, you're looking at defense systems, right? You're looking at various different government operations around the world. And there needs to be this mitigation strategy put in place that really takes a look at mobile, and how to protect mobility overall.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this stems out to supply chain risk and, both government and non-government organizations. So on the topic of mobile, I wanted to pull up a quick stat here. Based on what Lookout reported, in 2023, more than 50% of personal devices were exposed to a mobile phishing attack every quarter. And this is a stat that we're seeing increase year over year as we continue to track. So diving deeper into some of these threat actors, what are some of their driving motivations, and what are some of the techniques that you're seeing that they're using to successfully exploit some of these weakest links or blind spots like mobile devices?
Yeah, great question. So, let's take a look at, some of the more hot topics, right? Advanced persistent threats. Earlier this year, we had put out a report around APT 41, who's I would say, a Chinese-sponsored threat actor. And we identified that ultimately they've started really kind of utilizing the mobile, threat vector or a mobile-first approach. As far as we can tell so far, as far back as 2015, where they started utilizing worm spy malware, and that has since shifted, as has their tactics. But really, that really kind of goes towards China's national interests. Sometimes it's more for personal gain, as we've seen just out of APT 41 out of in general. But there's other elements out there. We can take a look at the Houthis and their cyber conflict against the Yemen civil war, where they're really utilizing that mobile vector, utilizing a combination of WhatsApp for phishing links and attempts to get people to download malware, as well as just straight up Android malware, in order to conduct their operations. Now, we've also got I would say a massive amount of mobile attacks in general that kind of stem out of China. And that really kind of aligns to the Chinese interests and the alignment of their national strategy, which is to ultimately have everything made in China by 2025. So now you're talking about industrial espionage, you're talking about, state sovereignty, espionage, against other government organizations. And so they're really out there to kind of, make sure that their interests are taken, are taking advantage of that mobile vector, which really isn't, looked at as, something that needs to be protected in most organizations today. Now, if we take a look at maybe some of the more common conflicts that are happening right now, we've got, unfortunately, the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, where Russia has been utilizing that mobile vector time and time again, where they have successfully attacked the tablets that Ukraine was using for their command and control operations. This is just another vector, just like any other computing system.
Yeah.
And now we've got Israel and the Gaza conflict, right? So now we're going to start to see probably some attacks from Iran, maybe some of their proxies, such as the Houthis, right? They've already got a pretty successful cyber capability that we could start to see as well. And even more, right? Going back to the Russia and Ukraine conflict, there was an article that was just put out, I think it was last week, where Sandworm, which is ultimately the Russian GRU, there's a specific unit there, but they have been really, really successful at attacking critical infrastructure, specifically power, in Ukraine. And what was found was ultimately that these folks had been in the environment for some time, and the timing of a kinetic response with Russia's military, and when ultimately the power was taken down in Ukraine, kind of leads you to believe that this was a specific goal. Later on, they started turning off the power in Ukraine, which could be, part military or even part, psyops operations that are happening there. But really, kind of the big successful campaign, as I mentioned earlier, with Scatter Spider and Octopus, it really is that mobile phishing. That's the start of it all. Once you can get that one unfortunate individual puts in their credentials, MFA fatigue or even SIM swapping capabilities is all you need to walk right into an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing a lot more, proactive steps to prevent these new types of attack surfaces and techniques that are coming out. So that's good to hear, but definitely work to be done. So, in the U.S., in terms of our national security interests, we are approaching election time. As you know, last election rather, there was, the DNC hack. There are multiple disinformation campaigns that were orchestrated by both Russia and China. So I'm just curious, what are some of the threats that we may see this next election cycle? And, in terms of AI, how does this create greater risk? Are there more vulnerabilities now? And, could AI even be weaponized to coordinate more advanced socially engineered campaigns?
Yeah, so there was recently an executive order, right, that was taking a look at really the importance of addressing cybersecurity risks associated with AI, right, and it really just kind of put out the notion of, hey, federal agencies really need to start taking a look at AI, really kind of understand the various different vulnerabilities and potential risks, as well as the benefits that are associated with AI. But when it comes to the elections, if we take a look at what happened back in 2016, where we had, Russia successfully infiltrate the DNC, it was kind of interesting, as there were multiple Russian intelligence groups. There was both the FSB as well as the GRU, both inside, giving Russia kind of that multi-point of view, if you will. To where they were really getting a good understanding of what was happening in terms of U.S. elections and what they were trying to accomplish, but also that was able to kick off a campaign of disinformation, misinformation, surrounded by half truths. Right now, AI hasn't really been utilized thus far. We've seen some phishing campaigns where you've got near perfect English now, as an example. However, we have seen things like AI generated video and photographs that are getting better and better. There's still some ways that you can identify, a fake or not. But it is kind of expected to possibly see, whether it's Russia or China to really kind of kick into gear, utilizing AI and a combination of video, imagery, as well as the continued disinformation or misinformation campaign, again utilizing either half truths or just complete false information. And China has been really ramping up their election meddling capabilities. If we take a look, Canada just opened up an inquiry into their election, or the recent elections, where they believe China did indeed meddle, in their process. So really, there's quite a bit that we need to just be aware of and really kind of understand the tactics that are going to be coming in, and various different ways that we can defend against, such as even vetting information or knowing your sources of information.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it all starts with awareness and how to prevent it. I think we could spend all day looking at some of these threats and how agencies can stay safe on the road ahead. A lot of important things to think about in the future. But we do have to wrap up this segment. So I just want to thank you for being there. Anyone who's listening that wants to continue the conversation, our team is definitely available to connect. Feel free to comment if you're watching now. But Jim, again, just want to thank you for being here today. Anything else you want to say in closing?
Yeah, if you're looking for mobile specific threat information or just kind of understanding what's going on, we just launched just a few weeks ago our threat intelligence hub. Head over there. You can stay proactive in your mobile defense strategy. You can also get better understandings of the threats that are out there. But also, when you're looking at the modern threat, make sure that you've got MTD as a part of your defense strategy. That'll help a long way.
Excellent advice. Thanks again, Jim, and thanks for everyone who tuned in.
Thanks for having me.